Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Cleaning Lady, Season 3, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's the whole situation with Tony, once again, back to juggling so much. She's got to work for Ramona and her cartel, as well as worrying about getting Fee and Chris back. Obviously, they're in a position where they're going to meet up with a coyote, and obviously Tony's juggling that. Obviously, once again, like, we have the whole Susan thing. It's just like everything just keeps compiling on Tony's shoulder. So obviously she has to do some cleaning, but then like one of the vans she's supposed to clean, she sees placenta there. So it's like, right, this mother, I think for her, being a doctor, she probably recognizes like, right, there's a lot more blood near than should be. So there might be something else going on, or at the very least, a mother just recently gave birth. She should be checked out. I am a medical person, so she ignores her work. I mean, we don't know if she also did her work and checked on the lady. Who knows? Kind of seems like it was more so like her looking after the lady, but she goes to check on her, and ultimately the dude running the place, like her overseer, her watcher, or her handler, kind of in this situation, Dante, is constantly watching over her and stopping her. So Tony takes him back to her place, which her place was recently trashed because someone went there, told her to go home and stuff like that, because I guess they figure most of the people that work there are illegal immigrants. I can't see it because I'm not recording video, Ozzy, but I put that in quotes and stuff. So, but this dude Jeremy shows up, played by Brandon J. McLaren, which I best know him for like being the Red Ranger on Power Rangers SPD. And funny enough, like I was watching something recently. It was like an interview from I think a podcast where he was talking about it. Might not have been a recent. I saw the video recently, but it might have been like a clip from like 6 months ago. I think he also talked about Graceland because I think I forgot he was in that. I only ever saw the first season. That's a show I'm going to circle back to. But either way, I was kind of nervous at first. I was like, please don't be a bad guy, Jeremy. But it seems like he's on the up and up. He helped out around the shop. He's like, I know you're feeling bad, like, and you're doing a really good job of hiding it. But it's like, hey, the fact of the matter is, he's like, I might not know your circumstances and know what it's like to be in your shoes, but I'm guarantee you this is your home and you deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. So it's like, hey, good guy, Jeremy. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But now I'm also kind of scared and worried, like, well, Jeremy being around Tony might, sadly, the people in Tony's life always get wrapped up in everything she's involved in. So her family's neck deep in everything she's involved in. So I'm worried, like, hey, you might end up being like on the chopping block this season of like, yeah, we got introduced to you, Jeremy, you're a good guy, and maybe you want to help out Tony, and it ends up getting you killed. I could see that. I was like, I hope that doesn't happen the case, but it's like, I don't know, the situation doesn't always allow for people to be good without there being, like, there are consequences to being good, sadly, when it comes to this show. No good deed goes unpunished type of situation. I mean, look at Tony. Helping out that mother kind of almost screwed her on two fronts. It put her in a bad position with Ramona, but also Susan showed up being like, whoa, Tony, what are you doing? It's like, I'm trying to save this woman's life. Well, you need to stop. You don't have a license. You should be practicing any medicine right now. It's like, help me or this woman might die before an ambulance get here. So they work together. But Susan's like, yeah, this is the second time you've been caught practicing without a license, so I'm gonna have to write you up. But Tony, once again, it's like you learn to play this game of like, yeah, like, you know how to manipulate a situation, because I love Tony being like, go ahead and do that, because you'd have to report yourself as well, because you're the one that helped me. And even Susan be like, all right, so I guess it'd be best for this not to come up. And it's like, yeah, I think it would be best. I'm like, that's not gonna, I don't know, I feel like that's going to screw Tony over in the future. I mean, granted, they saved a woman's life, so that Susan might let that slide, but I could see her seeing like, oh, the dirt, you kind of like, you throwing shade at me like that, doing that, it's something Susan's going to keep in the back of her mind, and it's going to be used against you, in her mind, to kind of prove like, yeah, maybe your son, maybe Lucas shouldn't be around you. You aren't the greatest person. So I just feel like that could be a thread that could go a multitude of directions. Maybe Susan's going to be super kosher about it, be like, nah, it's fine, it's good. I just don't feel like that's the case, especially because, you are trying to be above board with your job. You are trying to do right by Lucas, so you are doing what you believe is in his best interest, so I can't fault you for doing your job, because if the situation were any different, if it wasn't Tony we know it's Tony because we care about Tony. We followed her journey. So you're always going to be a little biased towards you're like, oh, look at you, Susan, you're screwing over. But it's like, Susan, you're doing your job. I can't fault you for doing your job, not knowing the extenuating circumstances to Tony's situation. Hell, if you knew the extenuating circumstances to Tony's situation, you'd most likely make it so she never have a Luca again, So that's kind of like I don't even know if catch 22 of it all would be that. But it's just like, yeah, just that's the complicated rub of the situation. So, but yeah, like I said, there's that with Susan. And then there's Ramona not too happy about Tony doing what she did. But Tony's like, I saved someone's life. Like, but it's like, no. You do what I tell you to do, nothing more. It's like, but Dante knew about the woman that didn't do anything. They say, yeah, because like she would have gotten a doctor the next morning. It's like, yeah, but who's to say she would have lived that long? Because Tony tried to spin it like, right, because I've worked with Armand long enough, I know that, hey, your reputation is everything. So you don't want people being like, oh, why go to this like person to smuggle me into the country when I'm potentially going to die? It's like, sadly, a lot of people will still take their chances because they're that desperate, for this opportunity and chance. And it's like, you got to take it no matter how dangerous it is. It could be bad, but it's better than the alternative, so... But you would still get people second guessing it. I guess that's also but I think that'd be a reason why Ramona wouldn't be worried about it, because it's like, nah, these people are desperate. Like they would stake the chance even that they knew. It's like Tony making an excuse, but it's also like, right, she is a doctor, regardless if she's not technically one here in this country. She still is a medical professional, and they do have a creed to do no harm, which is complicated under her circumstances. But also, someone's in need, she wants to help them, especially because it's like, right, I don't want this child growing up without a mother. So, of course, I'm going to step in. But, Ramona is reminding her, like, right, you should be more concerned about your sister-in-law and your nephew rather than being so concerned about everyone else. Because you screwing up my operation, it's like, right, you would do anything to protect your family, Tony. I recognize that. But what makes you, what do you think I'll do to protect my family? So, how about we, be a little more weary of your circumstances, because and even Jorge is trying to make the whole point of, yeah, like this situation, you're only alive because of your connections with Armand. Like if it wasn't for that, you'd be already 6 feet under and buried. You'd be dead and buried. 6 feet under. So it's only by Ramona's good graces of trying to be good with Armand is the reason why you're still breathing. So she made that point. Jorge made that point. So, because that's the thing, and this is where Tony is, and this is where Nadia is, and this is where us as the audience are. We don't know who to trust, because Nadia gets in contact with Russo, and then Russo shows her photos like, oh, this is the person that grabbed Armand. This is the van, and it's like, oh, maybe Tony will know who this person is. So Nadia's trying to get in contact with Tony, happens to show up there. At first I was like, oh god, she's gonna, because I figured with them being around each other, I was like, man, she's gonna see Jorge and then figure it out. I wasn't expecting her to talk to Tony first, but because Jorge was in the car, so I was like, okay, so she's not gonna see Jorge, so Tony's able to avoid this confrontation. It's like, no, Jorge stepped up because it's like, oh, if you're here, that means you're looking into Armand. I told you to drop it and you didn't. And so now it all gets found out, and Nadia is pissed at Tony for keeping all of this a secret, because now it's like, right, you lied to me, like you've been doing all this behind my back. It's like, yeah, it's for the sake of Armand, but it's like, oh, but you're also getting something all out of this too, like your sister getting her back into the U.S. It's like, yes, but so Nadia looks at it as like, oh, like you don't have the best intentions, because like Nadia's like, all I'm doing is trying to get back Armand, but you no, you go ahead, you always do what's best for you, right, Tony? So I mean, once again, Nadia's always had beef with Tony for a while now. Once again, they started off in pretty good terms until partway through season 1. That really shifted, obviously, because of Armand, and then kind of that love triangle situation. So, but it's like, right, they're family, and now she knows that. It's like, why didn't you tell me? It's like, right, Tony was trying to protect Nadia, because it's like, yeah, Jorge made it clear. He knows exactly who you are. He knows you're Armand's wife, and he still is threatening you and stuff like that, because you could be the means of compromising their business. But it's like, if you let her in to know about what you're up to, then she wouldn't compromise the business. But it's like, it was a whole point that Jorge and Ramona were talking about this episode, because he looks at it as like our enemies are coming after us because of what Armand did. Like, it showed a crack in the armor, and now everyone's trying to take a shot at us. So he wants to get Armand back to kind of just shut all this down. Ramona wants to bring him into the fold, and it's like, is Jorge going to do something to Armand, like if he finds him first? Because she's like, well, no, why are you out there? I've got people out there, fillers, like, looking out there. Why are you getting personally involved? I guess it's like, right, you already have one missing family member in the wind. The last thing you want is your brother to be up in the wind missing. But now I'm also thinking, like, could it be she's behind Armand's disappearance? Because, like I said, it's just that conversation of it's unclear who to trust. Like, we don't know. Because of what Nadia saw in the video, it's like, right, so the van, which later on Tony remembers, that van, I saw it there, like one of the vans, not that I was supposed to clean it out, it's just that I remember seeing the van, because she correlated the moment she looked at the broken glass in their place at work. She was staring at it, and it reminded her of the van that was shot up, but she remembers the white van from the video that Nadia showed her. So now it's like, okay. And she goes back and she confronts, Jorge finds her there, and it's like, right, this is where Armand was. It's like, were you behind this? And that, I think legitimately, I like looking at Jorge's face, he's kind of like, you better get out of here. It's like, what are you going to do to him? Because Ramona wants him back, sure, but you, like, that could cause problems in your organization you don't want. But then you had that look on Jorge's face, that didn't seem like a crap, she's on to us. That looked more like a, could she be onto something, though? Because Jorge's staring at the blood like, he's like, well, why? That's what he's not. So I'm like, is Ramona making moves without Jorge? I mean, because they both have different opinions on how they run the business, too. She wants to keep things going, and because that's how she's consolidated power. Like, things have kind of worked this way for so long, but Jorge's like, we got to advance, we got to change, because the way we're running things is so old school, it's so archaic. We've got to kind of move on to the new way, and it becomes this conversation of street smarts versus college smarts, because it's like, you think, because no, it's work ethic versus college smarts, because Jorge like has like a degree and stuff like that. It seems like he's very intelligent, and so she's like, oh, you're trying to bring your college education to this, when it's like hard work. My hard work is what built this like cartel into what it is today. So it ends up being that conversation. Like, it's more of a hard work and street smarts versus the college smarts. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that divide plays out over the course of the season. But also, like, is Ramona behind Armand's disappearance, or is someone else inside of her organization outside of Jorge trying to make some move? Because the guy that grabbed Armand, we don't know who he is. He does have a tattoo. It seemed, the video is blurry, so we can't tell because it's like body cam footage. But it seemed like his hand had like a tattoo or something, so I don't know. We did see like his face partially, but Tony doesn't recognize him, so it's not someone she's run into yet. So, because Jorge just said like, right, we pick up like vans that are in junkyards and stuff, so he made it seem like they just got this by chance. But I mean, to be fair, they want to clean it up, so I guess so they could potentially reuse it for other stuff in the future, or like clean any traces that might be left to anything they're associated with. But he made it sound like, right, we just randomly get vans, clean them from whatever deal they might have been a part of, and then we reuse them for whatever purposes we need. It seems like, well, it's probably maybe like it helped. I mean, I'm sure the vans in general help with the whole transporting people, like smuggling people into the country type of situation, like we have with Fiona and Chris's side of things. But we'll get to that soon enough. Like I said, that's just where my suspicions are currently. I don't think Jorge's behind. It also seems like they set him up to be the red herring. Like, oh, he obviously, like, doesn't have, like... And I think that's also meant to be the point. Like, Ramona seems like she's so about getting Armand, but maybe that's also the point in play. Or, like I said, maybe it's just maybe someone in her organization, maybe someone outside of it. Because Nadia, feeling betrayed, felt like, well, there's only one person I can turn to. So she goes back to Russo. Had made the whole point of, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to give you the cartel if you help me find Armand and you give us immunity. Plus, now I'm willing to throw Tony in there because I can't trust Tony either. So it's a win-win-win all around, except Russo's not going to play ball because of everything Armand's done. Reneged on the deals, complicated things, gotten Garrett killed. So I'm going to see him taken down. You, Nadia, can get immunity. You will just have to help me take down Armand, which she's not willing to do. Because it's like, yeah, Armand has a pile of bodies that are stacking up, and he's not going to be able to get away with it. Because if I let him get away with it, Garrett's death would be in vain. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. But yeah, now the one person Nadia felt like she could turn to in this moment, the one means to an end, she ends up, that's down the drain. So now she has to go this alone because she's not going to work with Tony because she can't trust Tony. But maybe she will because she's like, well, I can't trust the FBI either. Luckily, Russo doesn't know anything, but that's not 100% true because she does know that Tony knows. So she'll probably hold the Garrett stuff above Tony, especially when Tony's now in a point where she's kind of thinking like Nadia now that the cartel is responsible. Which even Russo's like, yeah, maybe the cartel took him, or maybe that was someone Armand was working with that snatched him. It wasn't a kidnapping, it was an extraction. So just don't know. Like I said, so many spinning plates, not sure who to trust in this situation. And then on top of all that, we have the Chris and Fiona side of things, where obviously they are getting transported across the border. I mean, along the way, they end up meeting. Well, before they even got picked up by the coyotes while they're in the process of getting in the van, Chris ends up intervening and helping this mom and daughter who were like, only one of them would have been able to go because they didn't have enough money to cover both of them. But Chris gave, like, the money his dad gave him last episode, he uses that to kind of pay the difference. And so they're both able to go. And the whole situation, like, I think Chris is always like, you know, he was talking to Fiona. He's like, oh, was I always fussy like that? And she's like, yeah. And he grumpy like that. And she's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I guess things haven't changed. It's like, yes, he's self-aware enough to kind of recognize, like, I know how I can be sometimes. And he's kind of, especially after last episode with Paulo kind of telling him more about what his mom had to give up, kind of leads to this beautiful conversation of like, did she ever think about staying? And it's like, oh, what did she ever think about what would have happened if she stayed? But she's like, I didn't have time to think about what ifs. I needed to get to America so that you could be a citizen and have a better chance at life. It's like, what about Paulo? And what about his great, you know, it's like, what about my grandparents? It's like, well, they weren't really helpful to me, you know. And Chris is like, wait, but you were pregnant. They were about to be grandparents. It's like, yeah, but I wasn't married. It was being a child out of wedlock. And she's like, it was a different time. Circumstances were different now. Like, they probably help out. But back then, no, it was different. I mean, you know, Fee's kind of made that clear in the past as well about how they acted at the time. So... But for her, it all worked out in the end because she had Chris, and it's just like she's lucky to have such a good kid. You know, it's a sweet bonding moment between them. Like I said, because Chris doesn't. There's a lot of times where Chris doesn't always treat his mom like he should. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, after a while he comes to realize, like, right, I'm kind of acting out. Shouldn't have said that. You know, I didn't really, and you know, Paulo gave him a lot to think about. It's like, right, I really didn't think about how much you sacrificed to be with me. And then how really tough things were for you at the time. Once again, she was like a teenager herself at the time she had Chris. So you're just, the entire time that storyline's happening, I'm like, I know something's going to go wrong. I know there's no way it's going to be so easy. Like, there's no way this is going to work out perfectly. And there's bumps along the road. Like, at one point, Border Patrol shows up. And I love Fee putting on her American accent. He's like, are you a national born American? She's like, yeah. And she kind of puts on this American accent, and it's like, what are you, some kind of perv? I was like, I don't know why I actually kept rewinding it because I was watching it after the fact. But I kept rewinding that part because I was like, I love how much she puts up an American accent. Because I think the way the actress who plays Fiona, like, naturally sounds, I do, because I don't think I brought this up during the cleaning lady, but she is in, like, 2 episodes of The Gentleman on Netflix. If you haven't seen the series, which I highly recommend. If you haven't seen it, you're looking for a cool kind of action-y crime drama. It's also on the funny side of things. It's an action comedy crime drama. I highly recommend you check it out. But either way, she's in 2 episodes, and she has an accent in that too. So I'm like, oh, that's probably just her natural accent. So this is her just putting on an American accent. Well, because I've never heard her outside of these 2 shows. I've never heard her in interviews. So like, I don't know, like, because she could be putting on, like, the accent she has as Fiona could be her putting it on. Like, that might not be her natural accent. So that's what this episode made me question that. I was like, oh, because. But I think that was her just putting. I think that is her natural accent, and she's just. Putting on American accent I thought that was just kind of neat how she did that, flip that switch like that. That was just pretty dope. But like I said, I knew things weren't going to be super copacetic. So sadly, the mom and daughter got separated. The daughter is with Chris and Fiona, and it's like, oh, where are we going? It's like, well, we're going to the same spot, which I kind of got a little nervous when they went separate ways. It's like, well, you both don't want to go the same path because you're more likely to get caught that way because it could be seen suspicious. So you want to take 2 different routes there. But while they were kind of taking like a break, like one of the guys, we don't know what he was doing. I don't know if he was just trying to get, be a creep or whatever, which is most likely. He was attacking like the daughter, and Chris intervened, and Fiona intervened too, and all 3 of them got left behind. So who knows where they are currently, so they're going to have to try and make their way on their own. Especially what sucks, too, is Fiona doesn't have her phone. Like, they took everyone's, like, belongings and stuff, like, just before they got in the van when the coyote picks everyone up. So she doesn't even have her phone. So she can't get in contact with Tony. They're just going to have to make it on their own. Plus, the girl doesn't know. For one, they don't know where they're supposed to meet up either. So that complicates things. So most likely, the mom will probably end up where she's supposed to, and maybe eventually that will cross over with Tony's story, and Tony will find out from her, like, wait, Fiona? You're looking for your daughter? Oh, she's with Fiona and Chris. That might be the connective tissue for the storylines in that regard. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all this, like how all these storylines play out, what's next. Because there's a multitude of directions each of these individual storylines could go, and then how said different directions end up connecting with all the other storylines. It's like I said, it's going to be so interesting to see how it all plays out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.